Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Jstfish Outdoors Live. Jstfish Outdoors is brought to you by Ranger Boats, where we still build legends one at a time. Yamaha Outboards, the reliable choice. Lowrance, world leader in fishing since 1957. Gene Larew Lures, Bobby Garland Lures, and Blue Water LED. I'm your host, Dale York, and I designed Jstfish Outdoors to focus on freshwater lakes and streams and provide information, tips, and techniques, along with how-to segments for catching everything from crappie to catfish. We will also provide tips on equipment, tackle, boating, and much, much more. All of this is aimed at helping you catch more fish and have fun doing it. So grab a cup of coffee, a comfortable chair, and let's talk about my favorite subject, fishing. Folks, this week's show, we're going to be talking about wintertime crappie fishing. I'll throw out there some of my tips for locating and catching these, these golden fried morsels, because, with the winter coming up and the cooler water temperatures, these crappie just seem to really get into fairly big schools. In some cases, they're easier to find because they're not so scattered. And also, I think they just seem to taste better. I grew up fishing for these things with my family, my mom and dad. And, we did this on a lake not too far from where I am right now, and we fish for them year round. I mean, we fish for them in the wintertime. We fish for them in the spring, of course, in the fall. But some of my fondest memories are really going up with the family in the wintertime. I can even remember breaking ice with a boat paddle to launch the boat and going up to some of these spots and, building a campfire on the side of the bank and just having these things. And, it's just a wonderful, wonderful time of year to get out there. But at the same time, we got to remember that, during these cold water temps, it's you have to be a little more safety conscious. You have to be a little more safety minded. One of the first things you got to talk about is, you got to talk about warm clothing. That's one thing that's really come a long way in the not too near future that we're seeing that, we just didn't have available back when I was fairly young. We've had so many good strides made in providing warm weather gear that's much lighter, it's waterproof, it's weatherproof, it's windproof. So that's one of the first things I would suggest to you. If you're going to be doing some of this inclement fishing, safety first. Always wear your PFD. And the second thing is, invest in some good quality clothing. Because it's just going to be miserable out there if you're cold. You're not going to spend the time out there you may need to find these schools of fish. You're not going to be comfortable while you're doing it, and it's not going to be near as much fun. So, that's the first thing I would recommend to you is spend a little time, spend a little money, and really, really invest in some good warm weather gear. It will really, really pay off in big dividends over the course of several trips out. So we'll go through that, and I'll throw out there some really tried and true tips that I found to be helpful, and I've learned over the years, not only from myself fishing with my family, but my brother and even some of the pros and some of the tournament guys have shared some of their tips and some of their shortcuts, and I'll throw a few of those out there as well. But like I said, starting off, you really, really got to invest in some warm weather gear, because that's really going to allow you to spend the time on the water in a comfortable situation and do some of the things that I'm going to talk about, and not just be miserable while you're doing it. Number one, when you're trying to look for these big slabs, crappie can at certain times feed very heavily in the colder waters. And I'm talking water temps, below 50, 52, 55 degrees. And I've said, once you locate them, you can just whack them. Many, many times you can catch your limit in, pretty short order. But, the number one trick to finding these, as with any fish, but especially this time of year, is, you've got to have your boat rigged with really, really good electronics. And, Lowrance Electronics, they can just absolutely cut that search time and allow you to get on these fish quickly, easily, target these fish. They're just an awesome partner when you're doing this kind of fishing in the wintertime. Like I said, you can't catch them if you can't find them. And, these great Lowrance Electronics will really, really help you do that. Speaking of which, we just announced this week some of the new lines in the Hook 2 series that Lowrance is putting on the market this year. And these Hook 2 series is really, 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 folks, aimed at the recreational fishermen, the weekend fishermen. It is really loaded up with software that is actually designed to just hit one button and the thing works. For those of us who run the carbons and the high-tech series, those are such capable units, but at the same time, you need to spend some time on the water and learn how to adjust them, how to set them up. And with this new Hook 2 series, like I said, it's a one-button game. They're really designed to push one button and go fish. You don't have to fiddle with your electronics to get it to maximize the image that you're seeing on the screen. So check into these. We'll be talking more and more about these in the coming weeks. And maybe you do a show on the new Hook 2 series that Lowrance has just launched. But like I said, folks, you really want to look into this for the upcoming season, or even this time of year if you're looking for a Christmas present for that loved one who fishes, or you're looking to upgrade your electronics for next season. I really highly recommend looking into this Hook 2 series because they have a very, very huge amount of specs launched into this thing, and it can really, really, really help you put you on the fish by just hitting one button. You just turn it on and it works. It's just that simple. When you're looking for these big schools of fish, you kind of need to tend to look more towards scanning into deeper water to find these big schools. Like I said, once this water temperature falls in the low 50s, crappie tend to start really schooling up and they seek cover. They can be found near all kinds of structure. They like trees, stump piles, brush piles, creek channel edges, bends in creek channels that may have a few scattered stumps or several scattered stumps along the edge of it. And one of the really high percentage areas in some of the lakes is boat docks. In many cases, that's the only structure you have available, and some of these boat dock owners will actually sink brush piles. And if you pay attention when you're looking at these boat docks, many times you can see the ropes that they're over the side that they've tied to the boat docks where they've sunk timber in it, and that can really tip you off as to where to specifically fish on these boat docks. So, if you're fishing in a lake that doesn't have a lot of timber in there, but does have boat docks, that may be one of your keys to finding these fish. Crappie always too, folks. They tend to stay in deeper water during the wintertime as the water is colder. Unless you've had 2 or 3, 4, 5 days of warmer temperatures, and often that can move the fish very shallow. And keep them there until the next cold front or the next north wind, or you have a change. You have a water level change, or you have a weather change. So don't overlook those if you've had 2 or 3 warm days to get up there in that shallower water and look for these fish. They're very much more tempered to really adjust to the weather than in many times what black bass are. And they don't mind moving shallow and deep, you know, in many cases in the same day. You may start out fishing 10, 12, 15, 20 feet deep, and before the day's over with, you may be up there fishing 6, 8 foot deep in order to catch fish. So, you really have to pay attention to what's going on. Some more tips I'll give you is, when you're fishing in clear waters, don't anchor directly over the fish or the structure that you're fishing. Many times the crappie can be very spooky in the wintertime in the clear water. So do the technique that many of us are calling cast and drag, where you make a longer cast and let the jig sink or whatever bait you're fishing with, and then have a tendency then to pull it through the brush pile or near the brush pile. The clearer the water, the less you want to tend to vertical jig or stay away from the spot that you're actually trying to fish. And this really, folks, that pretty much goes regardless of the species of fish. But crappie can be very, very spooky. One of the things that this Hook 2 series that I talked about earlier on Lawrence, it's side scan capable. So what you can do is you can go down through an area of a body of water, and you can scan out to the side of your boat looking for these brush piles, looking for these schools of fish. And you can mark these schools without running over the schools. And many, many times that can mean the difference between you catching quite a few fish out of that school and not catching any fish out of that school. So, that side scan capability is really, really helpful when you're looking for these fish, especially in the clear water situations. The other thing you can do when you're fishing clear water is to help avoid spooking the fish is using a longer rod. Using a 10 to 12 foot rod if you're doodle socking around stumps and this and that in the nature. You get that bait further away from the boat, further away from the trolling motor, and it can really, really help you out when you're trying not to spook these fish, especially when you're fishing some of these clear water reservoirs. So you might think about that at all. And that's really become a trade in the last few years. Is a lot of people, you're looking at spider rigging or pushing rods off the front of the boat. Many cases they're using 10, 12, 14, 16 foot rods doing this because they're trying to stay away from spooking those fish and getting that bait further out in front of the boat. Because another tip I'll give you, because crappie can gather in a almost unusually small spot. You may be fishing a brush pile that may be 6, 8, 10 foot across or have a diameter. But in many cases, what you may find is by fishing that brush pile that there's a very small area that you'll get a bite in. You can fish the whole brush pile, nothing else, but that one specific spot is where you're going to get bit. So, you want to fish that structure that you mark those fish on. You want to fish that structure very, very thoroughly. And in many cases, if that structure is out in the more open water, fish that structure from a lot of different presentation angles. Go around the structure with your trolling motor at a decent distance from the center of it, and maybe present that bait to those fish from several different angles. You may be surprised. I've been in situations to where I may be fishing a piece of structure for crappie, and I catch 6 or 8 crappie, and they turn off. I know there's more than 6 or 8 in there because you can almost count them with this Lawrence gear, but so what I do is I reposition the boat to present that bait at a different angle to those fish, and those fish they fire right back up again. Or in some cases, you change color of the bait, or the way the bait falls, maybe go from a 16th to a 32nd or vice versa. And sometimes that'll fire the fish back up, and you'll catch several more out of it. Another thing you can do is, if you've found more than one spot, is you can go catch a few fish out of that one spot A, and like I said, those fish will turn off, and you can go ahead, if you can't get them fired back up, you can go ahead and leave that spot and go to spot B and catch a few fish, and then maybe you can return at a later time to spot A and catch a few more fish. You know, don't be afraid to mix it up, because that can really help you out a lot as well. You know, if the water is very stained or murky, vertical jigging is a much easier presentation not to spook the fish around brush piles and trees. You know, it can really help you locate crappie at various depths when you're vertical jigging. In stained or muddy water, one of the things that you may want to look at is the fish may tend to be shallower than in clearer water. So you know, fish, you know, maybe a little bit shallower water, or a little bit shallower brush piles, or a little bit shallower structure than what you would fish perhaps in real clear water. Sometimes that will help you out as well. Another thing that will really help you out, folks, and I found this to be very true, you know, one of the trends that's come across in the last few years, especially for crappie fishing, is fishing larger and larger baits. You know, there's people out there who swear by fishing 3-inch baits. There's people out there who go all the way up to 4-inch baits. And, you know, if you catch a 1.5 pound crappie and really look at his mouth, one of the things you'll notice is they have a pretty good sized mouth for the size of the fish they are. So, you know, it's not uncommon for them to eat a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-inch bait, depending on the size of the fish. But another thing that I'll point out as well is I've been in several situations to where when you're getting that water temperature down into the 40s, maybe even, you know, 45, one of the things that can really help you is to downsize your baits. For those of you who dock fish a lot, or even the heated docks, you know, I've been in situations to where you could not get bit on a 32nd size head or a 32nd size body, but you go down to a 64th, which, you know, Bobby Garland's got some very small bodies, and sometimes that will trigger those fish to bite when just a slightly larger body or slightly larger presentation, those fish won't touch it. It can really mean the difference between you going home with enough fish for dinner and going home empty-handed. So, you know, and when that happens, oh my gosh, folks, you know, I just can't emphasize enough that one of the things you really need is you need a good sensitive rod paired with a good sensitive line and a good sensitive reel. Because when that water temperature gets that low, it is absolutely amazing how light these fish can strike. And if you're not tuned into that rod, if you're not tuned into that line, you'll never ever detect the strike to set the hook. It can really, honest and truly be that light. It's just amazing. You know, I've caught fish that I may be vertical jigging, and I'm used to the weight of that jig on my rod tip. I know what that feels like, and all of a sudden I just lose the weight of that that lure. My rod just goes light, and that's the whole bite, folks. That's it. That's it. So it can really be something that to make you pull your hair out when you're trying to catch these fish, especially if you're fishing deep. If you're fishing 20+ foot deep, oh my gosh, you know, that can put age on you trying to catch these fish in a cold water situation. When you're fishing plus 20 foot, it can really make you pull your hair out. That's for sure. So, you know, one of the things, like I said, I just try different things. Don't be you know, don't be jumped into one thing. Try different lures, try different sizes, try different presentations. You know, it's just amazing sometimes what one little change can do as far as triggering the fish. You know, and I can't emphasize enough that, folks, that once you're fishing an area, once you've chosen a brush pile or a stump bed or whatever, a dock, or whatever it is, make sure you fish the entire structure at every depth from every angle. You know, your Lowrance Electronics may mark fish in there, but you know, you may fish it for 5, 10, 15 minutes and not get a bite, and just change the angle or change that specific area of that brush pile that you're fishing, and all of a sudden you may catch 10, 12, 15 fish out of that one spot that's no bigger than a 5-gallon bucket, as long as you hit that same spot at the same depth every time. So you know, it is just amazing how they can lock into one specific area. You know, and if you can go right back to that area, man, you can catch several fish sometimes, and that's just how finicky they get, or how locked in they get to a specific area. You know, also take some mental notes, or take some notes on paper. If you're finding fish are schooled at a specific depth in one brush pile, and you've caught fish out of that particular time of day, you know, it's very likely that that same depth at another brush pile in that same area of the lake is going to produce, hopefully, the same results. So you know, really pay attention to patterns. You know, that's what patterns are all about, is you know, trying to put several areas together at a specific depth, at a specific time of year, and a specific bait where you can catch these fish. So you know, just remember that as well, is, you know, try to make mental notes, or even writing notes as to what's going on. You know, it'll change daily. Sometimes it changes from the morning to the afternoon. You know, like I said, I've seen times when I've caught fish at 12, 14, 16 feet of a morning, and as the sun come up and the warmest part of the day, the fish were more active, and I went all the way up to, you know, 6 or 8 feet and caught fish. I just quit catching them at, you know, 12 or 14 feet. They just quit. Well, they didn't quit, they moved. So you know, sometimes you just got to follow the roots of the fish and see what they're up to. So anyway, that's kind of some of my tips that hopefully will help you catch some fish and put some of those golden fillets on a dinner plate this winter. I know I'm certainly going to be out there, you know, putting a few of those on my dinner plate this winter, because I really like to eat them things. They're very, very delicious. So, you know, if you have a tip for a show, if you have a subject in mind, folks, feel free to drop me a line. I'll certainly try to put a show together that may help you. You know, go to my YouTube channel, give me a like, subscribe. That's what makes all this possible. We'll be coming to you every week with a different segment. We're going to, like I said, we'll be talking to guides. We'll be talking to boat dealers. We're going to be talking Lowrance Electronics. We're going to be talking Christmas list here for too long. We're just going to be talking a lot of things and having a lot of reports from a lot of people, just sharing knowledge. You know, like I said before, that's what this show is all about, is transfer of knowledge. We're here to help you catch more fish. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can reach me on my Facebook page, Jstfish Outdoors. You can drop me an email, justfishoutdoors@justfish.com. That's with a JST, folks. And please, like I said, go to my YouTube channel, hit a subscribe button, hit the like button. And, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to send them on my way, and we'll certainly try to help you out with whatever that question's about. So that'll just about do it for another week, folks. And we appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate your support, Jstfish Outdoors. And like I said, if there's anything else we can do to help, please don't hesitate to give us a call or give us an email. Jstfish Outdoors is brought to you by Ranger Boats, where we still build legends one at a time. Yamaha Outboards, the reliable choice. Lowrance, world leader in fishing sonar since 1957. Gene Larew Lures, Bobby Garland Lures, Blue Water LED. Like I said, folks, this is Dale York, host of Jstfish Outdoors, saying, we'll catch you later.